Victorian Institute of Teaching, the Code of Conduct Guidance Pack. Introduction. The Victorian Institute of Teaching, VIT, must develop, maintain and promote a code of conduct for the teaching profession under S2.6.3 of the Education and Training Reform Act 2006, the Act. The VIT first published the Victorian Teaching Professions Code of Conduct, the Code, in 2008. It was developed in consultation with the profession and key stakeholders for the purpose of providing guidance to the public and the profession on what is considered acceptable professional code of conduct by registered teachers. The code was revised in 2020 in response to the changing educational landscape, including the welcome addition of early childhood educators into the registered teaching profession, as well as the growth of social media and online platforms as communication tools in both a professional and personal capacity. The Betrayal of Trust inquiry and the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse has also changed the public's expectations of teachers' conduct and behaviour. The Code of Conduct identifies a set of principles which describe the professional conduct, personal conduct, and professional competence expected of a teacher by their colleagues and the community. It is based on the values set out in the Code of Ethics, Integrity, Respect and Responsibility. The Code of Conduct and the Code of Ethics are public statements developed for and by the teaching profession to reflect shared principles about practice, conduct and ethics to be applied to promote the highest standard of the professional practice, enable registered teachers to reflect on their ethical decisions, establish the quality of behaviour that reflects the expectations of the profession and community, and provides a clear statement to the community about these expectations. How to use the guidance material. The code and guidance material applies to everyone registered as a teacher or as an early childhood teacher with VIT. It includes teachers who hold provisional registration, full registration, dual registration, permission to teach, and non-practicing registration. The code applies equally to all registered teachers and or early childhood educators, regardless of their position in the workplace, including classroom teachers and those in leadership positions such as principals. The code applies to registered teachers, early childhood teachers, even if they are not currently undertaking the duties of a teacher. For example, if a person is a registered teacher but is currently working at a university, or as a person who is a registered early childhood teacher but is currently working in a different industry. The Code of Conduct is not designed to cover every situation. Teachers must use their own professional judgment in applying the principles to their individual teaching contexts. This guidance pack is designed to help teachers understand and reflect on what is appropriate professional and personal conduct within their specific teaching context. The code and guidance material can also assist pre-service teachers, the public, parents, carers, learners and non-teaching professionals in understanding the expectations of teachers in relation to their personal and professional conduct. This guidance material is designed to be read in conjunction with the Victorian Teaching Professional Code of Conduct and Code of Ethics, and provide more detailed explorations of the expectations of a teacher in their personal and professional conduct, and maintaining appropriate professional boundaries with learners. The guidance material provides the following for each section and principle of code of conduct. It explains the key terms and phrases. There's case studies and questions that teachers can use to reflect on their own conduct. Guidance material, background and purpose. The background and purpose statement frame the code of conduct, the code, and outline the relationship between the code of conduct and the code of ethics. It provides the rationale for the development and implementation of the code and the teaching profession, and clearly states the purpose of the code. The code applies to all registered teachers, early childhood teachers, regardless of their employment status. The code is not designed to cover every situation. Teachers must use their own professional judgment in applying the principles to their individual learning context. The code should be used by teachers to guide their professional and personal conduct and assist them to solve ethical dilemmas. The VIT may use the code to assist in determining if a teacher has engaged in misconduct, serious misconduct, or whether it is a question regarding the teacher's fitness to teach. The VIT may consider a departure from the code of conduct to be grounds for an allegation of misconduct or serious misconduct, or call into question a teacher's fitness to teach. In these circumstances, VIT may take regulatory action. The VIT will always consider the individual circumstances and the context in which the conduct occurred. Any regulatory measures will always be viewed within the context of what is considered necessary to protect the safety and well-being of the children and young people. Definitions. Misconduct. Misconduct in relation to a teacher or an early childhood teacher includes 1. Conduct of the teacher or early childhood teacher occurring in connection with the practice of teaching that is of a lesser standard than a member of the public or members of the teaching profession are entitled to expect from a reasonably proficient teacher. And 2. The confrontational of or the failure to comply to the conditions imposed as the registration of a teacher or early childhood teacher under this part, and 3. The breach of an agreement made under this Act between the teacher and the early childhood teacher and VIT. Serious misconduct. Serious misconduct generally involves a substantial departure from the accepted standards of the profession, including conduct that is found to be infamous, disgraceful, dishonourable, and shameful. Fitness to teach. Fitness to teach in relation to a person means whether the character, reputation, and conduct of a person are such that the person should be allowed to teach in a school or in an early childhood service. Suitability to teach. Suitability to teach in relation to a person's means A. Whether a person is fit to teach, and B. Whether the person is physically or mentally able to teach. Impairment. Impairment is defined as a physical or mental impairment and or disability considered or disorder, including substance abuse or dependence. The VIT is able to investigate if a teacher's ability to practice as a teacher is seriously affected, detrimental, affected, or likely to be affected due to an impairment. Guidance Material, Section 1, Professional Conduct. Teachers' professional conduct is characterised by the quality of the relationships they have with their learner, the parents, carers, families of the learner, their communities, and their colleagues. Principle 1.1. Teachers provide opportunity for all learners to learn. Definitions. Communicating effectively and appropriately with their learners. In communicating effectively and appropriately, teachers should always maintain appropriate professional boundaries and communicate in a professional manner. The way teachers communicate with individuals will vary depending on the purpose of the communication, as well as their relationship with the person and the audience. Teachers should consider the following when ensuring they are communicating effectively and appropriately. Purpose of the communication. Intended audience. Example, parents, carers, learners, colleagues. Cultural background of the audience. Age of the learner. Specific vulnerabilities of the learner. Workplace policy and expectations. Most appropriate method of communication. Timeliness. Any privacy considerations. Individual differences. Teachers must take all responsible steps to be familiar with the specific needs of their learners. They should approach the teaching of their learners in a way that is responsive to their specific needs and capabilities. Quality teaching. Teaching that meets the specific needs of the learner, taking into account the teaching context. Teachers must be able to reference their practice against the Australian professional standards of teachers. Approaching the teaching and understanding of each individual learner without judgment or prejudice. Teachers should ensure their personal beliefs and opinions do not detrimentally affect the way they work with learners. Case studies. These hypothetical case studies are designed to stimulate discussion and debate about what is considered appropriate professional and personal conduct of teachers, as well as appropriate strategies to prevent inappropriate conduct. Outcomes are not provided. Any case investigated by VIT is considered on its individual merits and context. Therefore, teachers should use these provocations to reflect on their own practice within the specific context. Identify what issues are highlighted by each case study and use the reflective questions to guide further discussions. Teacher MV. Teacher MV is a teacher in a secondary college and has a teaching load of predominantly Year 10 classes. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19, they have been teaching all classes online for the past few months. Teacher MV has a good rapport with learners who have been quite responsive during online learnings. During a session, one of the learners, Learner J, misunderstands a question and provides an answer that is unrelated to the question. Teacher MV responds quickly with, "Oh, J, you dodo, where did you get that from?" Learner J is embarrassed as their classmates begin to comment in the chat function and refer to them as a dodo. The following session, Learner J's classmates continue with the commentary and the name Dodo seems to stick. Learner J is upset and angry and leaves the class. Teacher MV realises that Learner J has logged off and phones their parents after the session. Learner J's parents are unaware of any issue, but after speaking with Learner J, it is apparent that Teacher MV's comments has created a situation where Learner J no longer feels comfortable being part of the class. Learner J's parents complain to Teacher MV, who states that their comment was a good-natured jibe intended to make light of the situation. Next case study. Teacher OZ. Teacher OZ is a grade 4 teacher in a small country town. Teacher OZ's parents work at the local business, which is managed by a well-to-do family whose child, learner G, is in Teacher OZ's class. Teacher OZ's partner was recently made redundant by the company for cost-cutting purposes. After Teacher OZ's partner lost their job, Teacher OZ was upset with the actions of learner G's family and began to unconsciously show their feelings in the classroom. Without realizing, Teacher OZ began to pick on learner G in the classroom by ignoring their contributions to the class discussion and always reprimanding them for talking, even if there were many other learners talking. Learner G and their friends noticed how Teacher OZ's behaviour appeared to be targeted at learner G, and learner G told her parents. Learner G's parents spoke to the principal, who sought out Teacher OZ with the side story and to discuss the situation. Teacher OZ admitted to feeling angry towards the family and realised how their feelings were impacting on their teaching and particularly their interactions with learner G. Next case study. Teacher KA. Teacher KA is a Year 9 science teacher who is tasked with teaching a sexual education class. During the class, she begins to make personal comments that stray away from the curriculum, including, "You girls need to learn to look after yourselves when it comes to these things and keep your legs crossed. Back in my day, we never had sex until we were married. I'm not sure you Gen Zers are keen to explore your sexuality at such a young age. Just because celebrities do it doesn't mean you should too. Boys, it's important you don't ask for sex from girls. They need to look after their virginity because they can never get it back." A number of girls from Teacher KA's class become concerned about the nature of the Teacher KA's comments. They complain to the principal, noting that Teacher KA made them feel uncomfortable and targeted. When the principal speaks to Teacher KA, she admits to having made the comments, but says she only did it out of concern for the learner's safety. And last case study, Learner T. Learner T is a Year 11 chemistry student who works hard at her studies and is looking to pursue a career in science. Her class is predominantly male, and she feels that the teacher BN, excludes her from active learning in the class. Learner T speaks to her parents about it, and they ask for examples. Learner T says that Teacher BN never chooses her to answer questions and is very dismissive of her questions during practical sessions. Learner T also says Teacher BN often calls her darling or sweetie, but only ever addresses the male learners by their last names. Learner T says Teacher BN has made a few offhand comments, such as the time Learner T queried a method during a practical class and Teacher BN responded with, "Well, this isn't home economics." A discussion with Teacher BN reveals that he does address Learner T differently with the intent of being caring and is unaware of other behaviours she described. Teacher BN admits that he did not take Learner T's interest in a science career seriously. Reflective questions. After reading Principle 1.1, the definitions and case study provocations, use the following questions as relevant to your context to reflect on how you can ensure you demonstrate the expectations in this principle. Do I have any personal beliefs or opinions that may affect the way I interact with learners. What steps can I take to ensure my personal beliefs and opinions do not negatively impact the way I interact with learners? Do my school values influence my actions in this area? What vulnerabilities or background of my learners do I need to consider? What forms of communication are most appropriate to use with my learners? Am I considering the needs of confidentiality in my communication? Principle 1.2. Teachers treat their learners with courtesy and dignity and promote participation and empowerment. Definitions: respectful and impartial language and behaviour. As teaching professionals, teachers should ensure that they are using respectful and impartial language and behaviour with learners. This includes ensuring language and behaviour is sensitive to the learner's context, unbiased, and inclusive. Protect learners from intimidation, embarrassment, humiliation, and harm. Teachers must take all responsible steps to provide a safe learning environment for their learners, free from intimidation, embarrassment, humiliation, or harm. For example, learners should be able to speak freely and share their views. However, where this negatively impacts another learner, a teacher should take steps to intervene. A learner's individual context and specific vulnerabilities. Teachers must consider the specific vulnerabilities of learners in all of their interactions with them. Teachers should take responsible steps to familiarise themselves with these vulnerabilities. The specific vulnerabilities of learners are varied, but may include their age, gender identity, sexual orientation, cultural or linguistic background, socio-economic background, family context or dynamic, disability or additional needs. Case studies. These hypothetical case studies are designed to stimulate discussion and debate about what is considered appropriate professional and personal conduct of teachers, as well as appropriate strategies to prevent inappropriate conduct. Outcomes are not provided. Any case investigated by VIT is considered on its individual merits and context. Therefore, teachers should use these to reflect on their own practice within their specific context. Identify what issues are highlighted by each case study and use the reflective questions to guide further discussions. Teacher JU. Teacher JU is a high school English teacher. Teacher JU took long service leave last year to travel and has now returned to the school. In the past year, the learner in their class has come out as transgender and has asked the school to refer to her by a different name from her birth name. The school has been incredibly supportive of the change. However, as Teacher JU was absent during this process, they address the class as boys and girls and continually refer to the learner by her former name. This continues without much improvement from Teacher JU, despite the class constantly reminding them to call the learner by her new name. The longer this goes on, the more frustrated Teacher JU becomes, rolling their eyes and saying things such as, "You know what I mean, and let's just move on now," trying to hide their own embarrassment and frustration. The learner pretends not to care to save JU from the embarrassment. However, she confesses to a friend at lunchtime that Teacher JU's faux pas are making her feel incredibly uncomfortable and make her not want to go to class at all. The learner's friends confide in the assistant principal, asking them to have a talk with Teacher JU, as it's distracting them from learning and not making it safe and inclusive environment. Next case study. Teacher HN. Teacher HN is a primary school teacher. He repeatedly asks a specific learner S, to stop talking. Teacher HN also singles learner S out in class for reprimand and making belittling statements towards her, such as, "You have an extremely screechy voice." While Teacher HN's behaviour is not intended to cause harm, he was unaware of the impact on learner S. Learner S perceives Teacher HN's behaviour to be both intentional and bullying, and subsequently suffers from stress and anxiety because of the comments. Teacher HN's behaviour occurs over many months. A friend of learner S alerts Teacher HN to learner S's distress, and Teacher HN immediately takes steps to both address the problem and to change his behaviour. Teacher HN does not follow up with the parents, notify the school leadership, or seek advice about the issue. Learner S continues to feel anxious during classes for months afterwards. Teacher ZR. Family E is well known to the local secondary school, with 4 children who have attended over the years. C, D, E, and more recently, learner F. Parent A from Family E is on a disability pension, and Parent B cares for Parent A and the children. The family are struggling financially and have required support from the school for their children to access uniforms and to attend excursions. On occasion, the school has asked to provide lunch for the children. Despite efforts from the school to assist, there have been numerous attendance and behavioural issues with learners C, D, and E. Learner F, the youngest, attends a Year 7 orientation day and is assessed by their primary school as at level in academic performance. There is no mention of behaviour or attendance issues on their transition information sent from to the secondary school. Learner F attends an English lesson on the first day of secondary school. Learner F's English teacher, Teacher ZR, promptly identified Learner F as one of the Family A kids and says, "Will not be putting up with any rubbish." Learner F immediately feels uncomfortable. During the year, Teacher ZR reports uncooperative behaviour by Learner F to the student manager and the school's student file system. Learner F has an excellent record of behaviour in all other classes and maintains good grades. Parent A contacts the school concerned that Learner F's grades in English have slipped. Parent A also expresses frustration over Learner F's treatment by Teacher ZR, who repetitively refers to Learner F's lack of electronic devices, despite knowing the family cannot afford one. Parent A advises the school that Learner F admits they have been rude to Teacher ZR on occasion because they feel that they are being victimised. The student manager discusses the situation with Teacher ZR, who dismisses the concern as more issues from a family of troublemakers, and that Learner F is condemned in the same fate as their siblings and is therefore not worth my time. Next case study, Teacher AP. Teacher AP is an early childhood teacher working in a long daycare setting with 3 and 4-year-olds. One of the children in the group is misbehaving during outside playtime. The child yells, throwing sand at another learner, and refuses to follow Teacher AP's direction to stop the behaviour. Teacher AP tells the child that they will need to stay outside until they have calmed down and move the rest of the group inside to continue with the next activity. Teacher AP closes the door to the room, leaving the misbehaving child outside. The child was left unsupervised until Teacher AP let them back into the room 25 minutes later. Next case study. Teacher YS. Teacher YS is a grade 6 teacher in a small country town. In teaching YS's class, there are a number of learners they perceive to have challenging behaviour. These learners have identified disabilities, and the teacher YS has not been implementing the strategies recommended in their individual learning plans. Another teacher walks past teacher YS's class and notices that one of the learners throws a chair. The teacher observes YS's responding by dragging the learner who has nonverbal autism across the room to stop the behaviour. The teacher who witnessed this scenario notifies the principal. Some reflective questions. Does my language and behaviour reflect the professional expectations of my workplace? Could my language or behaviour be perceived as disrespectful or biased? Thinking about your learners, what information do I have about their specific vulnerabilities? How can I find out more? What adjustments should I make to the way I interact with my learners, given their specific vulnerabilities? What supports and policies are in place at my workplace to manage challenging behaviours? Principle 1.3. Teachers work within their limits of their professional expertise. Definitions. Teachers are aware of the role of their own professional and agencies and know when learners should be referred to them for assistance. The responsibilities of teachers vary, and while they have an important role in supporting a learner's well-being, teachers should not act as a psychologist or other mental health practitioner. A teacher should be familiar with the relevant professionals, agencies to refer the learner to when issues arise that are beyond the reasonable expectations of a teacher. Other relevant professionals and agencies may include, but are not limited to, psychologist or mental health professional, medical professional, Department of Health or DH, Department of Families, Fairness and Housing,